My premise was that if you focus on positive things, people forget about the negative. And it's also true that the brain can only process one thing at a time. And so if it's a positive thing, it can't process any negative things at the same time. So I had a lot of good research that showed that this was working. And then the people, and I worked with all different groups in the community, neighborhoods, uh, businesses large and small, nonprofits, and and then the school said, "Hey, we could use this. Can you do anything for help us? Because we got a lot of unkindness in our school." And I started visiting schools and validating what they were saying. And so I put together a manual of kind of classroom and all school activities that they could use to in their school. And that was working. I had over 100 schools participating locally. And but then about mid-year, they kept calling me and say, "Hey, we're running out of ideas. Can't you come up with some um, program guide that would carry us through the whole year?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I have an idea how to do that." So I contacted all 100 schools that were already in the program, and I said, "Send me the, the activities you've done in your school that have been the most successful." And they did. They sent them to me, and I put together like a cookbook, and I had over 300 activities that had already been proven to be successful in one school or another. And underneath at the bottom, I put the person who contributed this. So I was editing this, and writing it and including the contributions of all the people in the schools that had given me uh, successful activities that worked in their school. So I knew that every activity in that manual had been field tested already. I didn't have to field test any of it. It was already been shown to be successful. And so that helped that problem. It carried them through the end of the year. And so I began to then think about, okay, if I'm going to change the school climate from a negative one to a positive one, what are the things that really need to happen? What are the interventions that need to happen in the school? So Ben put up that chart on the interventions. What I found was, as I mentioned, the kindness activities were for classrooms. They were all Some of them were all school activities, or some of them could be done in small counseling groups. But there was 300 plus activities that would get them through the whole year, and uh, and then I also added a a section on character education and cooperative learning, because one of the things that I see I've seen is part of the problem of why school climates turn more negative is, well, first of all, they focus on the negative, and mostly the competitive grading system always has that kind of element in it, that you're focusing on the mistakes that people made that caused them to get a lower grade. And so it seemed to me that we needed to balance the competitive nature of the school climate with more cooperative learning activities in the classroom and in the school. So I found a bunch of them in different places, and designed the ones I thought would work the best. And character education seemed to be a part of it. I mean, basically helping people understand and be more compassionate towards each other, and build character traits that would support that. So that was another intervention, and those were mostly classroom activities. There were a few all school activities, but mostly that was in the trenches in the classroom. Then, in addition to that, in almost all the schools, even elementary schools, I helped create a peer counseling program, or maybe call it a peer mediation program, where we trained a group of students, usually the upperclassmen, to kind of watch out in the cafeteria, in the halls, and wherever students were gathered, to see if there were kind of the festering of problems and conflicts that weren't getting resolved, and to be able to intervene effectively. And we taught them how to do that. We supervised them, and in some schools, it was a highly successful effort. And the amount of student to student disputes and anger and fights and things dropped significantly because of the peer counseling intervention. Then I also created a curriculum which allowed me to teach, or whoever was in the school to teach a semester-long conflict resolution students class for all students. And basically, that was a way of really building a skill set into the school to basically involve everybody in conflict resolution. Because the biggest reason why bullying and put downs continue is not the bulliers or the people who are put down. It's the bystanders who do nothing. And that's the target I tried to reach with this number four. I tried to reach them with giving them skills so that they could intervene or could resolve any conflicts they had in a peaceful way. And the research on that's very clear that when students are taught conflict resolution skills, the amount of fighting, the amount of disputes goes down significantly and is reduced sometimes to nothing in schools. So that one was a key part of a key intervention in the schools. And the last one was really looking at restorative justice. And restorative justice is a fairly new concept, but it really builds on the idea that the most important thing in any kind of conflict or any kind of dispute is to be able to restore some kind of normal relationships with the people involved. And obviously in schools, it was a perfect match because two kids get into a fight and they get sent to the office, they get disciplined, but then they go back to the classroom and there they are sitting side by side again. And the tendency to want to do it again is often there. And so in restorative justice, they basically bring the people together that are involved in any dispute, and they look for a way to find common ground. They look for a way to restore the relationship again to the two people. What kinds of acts, what kind of things has to happen? I remember one kind of classic example of restorative justice was this band was practicing after school for a concert they were going to give. And the band director, they were keeping him late over the dinner hour. And so the band director ordered pizza for everybody. When they were finished, they would all have pizza. Well, I was sitting outside the band room while they were still finishing, and these two boys came by and they said, "Oh boy, some free pizza." So they grabbed the pizza and ran and ate the pizzas. Not all of them, they couldn't eat all of them, but they ate most of them. And of course, then they got caught. Well, under a reputative justice system, they would have been immediately suspended. They would have been basically not able to do anything to restore any goodwill in that situation. So they put them together in a meeting room, the band director, some of the band members, and the two boys that did this. And the two boys were really pretty contrite about that. They realized they made a mistake. And so what they basically agreed to is that that the boys would supply the pizzas that they took at their own expense and treat the band members to a pizza party. And that was the way to resolve it. After that, it was everybody felt great about it. And so in many areas of discipline in schools, uh, the the focus is mostly on punishing people, mostly on you know looking at the things they did to violate the rules of the school and and making sure they don't do it again by sus- putting them on detention, suspending them, or expelling them. And that those are the three main weapons that they used to try to correct this problem. But none of that was working. It just didn't. It just did not reach the problem the way it needed to. And so the the issue had to be one of figuring out some other way to restore the relationship between the offender and the offended so that that did not lead to any further kind of offenses. And restorative justice has a great track record of doing that. They have a lot of processes that they use that are very effective to get people face to face and taking responsibility for what they did, and finding some way to make restitution, or in some way to resolve and restore the relationships they had. So those are and believe it or not, that fifth one is the hardest one to implement in schools. The schools are so in love with their reputative justice system. I remember I sat in a faculty meeting once, and the principal was talking about this one boy that had caused a lot of problem in the schools, and they said, well, we put him on detention, and that didn't work. Then we suspended him, and that didn't work. And then we ended up expelling him from the school. That didn't really solve the problem. And this one teacher raised his hand. He said, it looks like what we're doing is we're putting a big red letter on the middle of the forehead, the big A for adulterous in that famous novel about that. And we're not solving any problems. And so that was a great lead in for me to step up to the faculty meeting and talk about what I was planning to do, which was an alternative to that. And the faculty was ready for it.